We talk about a lot in our program, there's really no plan B. There's always just plan A, and you just respond to whatever gets thrown at you. Every single play is a situation. The quarterback has to know that every play gets you into the better situation on the next one. The whole organization is centered around that guy. We always say in our program, the quarterback is responsible for everyone's livelihood. Every decision that man makes is affecting everyone in the program.
Welcome back, or welcome to Y Option Season 2. I'm your host, Yogi Roth. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here at Y Option. Really excited about what we have going on here in Season 2. If you missed the first episode of Season 2, it was with Athletics Director at Northwestern, Mark Jackson. He's been a dear friend. He joined myself and Rhett Lewis on a limited series that he and I have started called The Process within Y Option. Check it out. We're going to interview elite leaders, coaches, broadcasters, performers, quarterbacks, and dive into the question that we're all trying to figure out. What is our process? How do you navigate life? How do you navigate being elite at what you do? Mark Jackson was the perfect episode 1 guest because he dove right into it, right? He talked about the lonely work, about journaling, his time with the Patriots, with Parcells, Belichick, Carroll, then the Raiders getting let go, and then trying to find his way around Jay Wright, and then, of course, now leading Northwestern Athletics. I love him like family. I think you'll really enjoy that episode. Check it out at yoption.com. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We're trying to really grow that and give you some content in that regard. Speaking of content, just got back from Las Vegas. I was there for media days all of last week. It was aggressive, but it was fun. 18 teams, and hope was everywhere. It really was. And I think when you look at every team, including Purdue, the only team that has a new head coach in Barry Odom, everybody got better from last year. That's amazing for every program. Also, it's scary because did Ohio State get better? We'll see. I mean, there's a lot of potential there, but they got 2 best players in America in Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs. Oregon, they get better after losing Dylan Gabriel? Maybe. Dante Moore, Austin Novosad. I'll be up there in a couple weeks, be able to tell you all about that quarterback competition. But a team that I think has gotten a lot better is Minnesota. And last year, they were in a bunch of one-score games, and look out this year, which is why episode 2 of season 2 is with their offensive coordinator, Greg Harbaugh. Last year as a broadcaster, I got to drop into a bunch of new communities for the first time, calling games for the Big Ten Network. One of my most enjoyable ones was when we got to Minneapolis. We had a great game, USC, Minnesota. And the following week, we had UCLA, Minnesota. It was awesome to cover this program because both games were won in the margins. And as I walked away from learning about PJ Fleck and his program, that is what they front load. They front load all of those little details. And the man leading the offense is Greg Harbaugh. And his path to coaching, if you're a young coach, if you're an aspiring coach, this is going to inspire you to just continue to compete, to stay on track, trust the process. And when you get your shot, go kill it. Because I think he has done that. Look, as a broadcaster, I love going back on Mondays and Tuesdays, watching games before the sun comes up. Last year, the first game I turned on every Monday morning was Minnesota. I love learning about their offense, how they attack red zone situations, third down situations. And we attacked this conversation about talking about those details. You saw it with Max Brosmer last year, and now he's with our good friend KOC, Kevin O'Connell, with the Vikings. And now this year, is it Drake Lindsey? Is he one of those stars? Because I think this league has dramatically improved at the quarterback position. We'll see if Drake Lindsey can fill or exceed the shoes that his former roommate on the road, Max Brosmer, created last year playing in this offense. Got to know Coach Harbaugh a lot over the course of last season and this offseason. I think you'll enjoy the conversations. We dive into the tiny little details. And as always, every conversation we dive into is brought to you by our founding sponsor, 76, keeping you on the go, go, go so you never miss a beat. So without them, these conversations do not happen. You're not going to want to miss a beat of this conversation. I think it'll make you better as a football fan, as a lover of the game, if you are a young coach. So many different aspects we dive into, starting with his story, how he eventually got to the seat that he is in. So I'll get out of the way. Here's my conversation with Minnesota offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, Greg Harbaugh. Oh, yeah, folks. Fired up. Greg Harbaugh joining the show. Coach, it's been a pleasure getting to know you over the course of the last season. Had heard about you, though, for a long time. Shout out to John Glenn from way back in the day, North Carolina Wesleyan, your roots back there. Thank you for the time, though, man.
Yeah, really excited to be here, Yogi. I appreciate it.
Heck yeah. All right. So, like, training camp, we're almost there. Yeah, I know there's a lot of preparation for you, but I want to start way, way back in time for you. I'm curious, like, were you one of those kids that like had a whistle around his neck? You're like, I'm going to go be a ball coach. Where was your vision towards the craft that you're now one of the, I think, premier experts in the country in?
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I would probably say, probably went back to about my sophomore year of high school. I was a realist. I think I kind of knew that I wasn't going to have a professional career in football. I even kind of realized it then, and I kind of took a liking to a number of coaches when I was younger, my high school coaches, my college coaches, but really it was, I think it went back all the way to my high school coach, Jason Tyndall, who actually coached me in middle school, where I just really had a fondness for him, and then kind of knew that I wanted to do this. I wanted to coach, and I just kind of started to follow those coaches, and then I was really around some good coaches in my college career. When I was playing Division III football at Avery University, and I just really wanted to do that. I wanted to make an impact on young people the same way that those coaches made an impact on me.
That's a pretty cool thought to have at that age. But it wasn't like you had this linear path to where you sit now as a coordinator in the Big
Right,
Ten.
right.
It's not easy, man. Like, I mean, you go through your CV, like your resume, and it's small school, GA, smaller, like you kind of had to go through it all. Like, did you ever a moment you're like, hey, man, maybe I'm gonna take a look at what this like sales job's like over here?
Not really. I think there was always hard times. I actually wish I would have been able to find it, but I had an interview when I was in college. I guess it was the senior spotlight, and I'll never forget the goal I had when I was in college was that I wanted to be that time I wanted to be an offensive coordinator by the time I turned 40, and I'll be 39 in September. This will be my third year being the offensive coordinator. I never really looked at it like I was not going to make it. We talk about a lot in our program, there's really no plan B. There's always just plan A. And you just respond to whatever gets thrown at you. And I never looked at it like, hey, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to do this. Because I always knew in my heart and with the support system I have around with my wife, Emily, my family, like I just knew that it was going to work out at some point. We were going to be able to stick with it.
I love that. I mean, there's got to be a true belief. When you think of like that core trait for you, where do you think that was implemented? Was that your coaches? Was that your family, your upbringing? Was that just who you were in your core DNA?
My wife always says I'm the hardest working person she knows. I just kind of do my job on a day to day basis. I want to be the best, husband, dad, and football coach that I can be. But I think honestly, my parents, my dad was, he played college football at East Carolina. I grew up being around the game, my mom, everyone, my sisters. And then like, I think as it goes, just the people that I was around, my high school coaches, like I mentioned, my college coaches, but it's just a lot of the support system that I have. But it really didn't start like when I coached Division III for 6 years. I really didn't know what true hard work was until I became a graduate assistant. Because when you're coaching Division III, you're doing what you love. You're coaching young people. You're really truly doing it for the love of the game because you're going out there. There might be 500 people in the stands. It's not the same as if you're running out for a Big Ten game playing USC. It's just a little bit different. And I think when I became a graduate assistant at Western Michigan under Coach Fleck, that's when I really truly figured out, okay, it's going to take this type of hard work. It's a challenge because you're not doing everything that requires coaching. You're making copies. You're on Vizio a ton. You're doing a ton of different things that you might not necessarily think you were ever going to do. And that's when I really had the support system of my wife when it was just Emily and I going through it. She was making more money than me. It was just she was the breadwinner. She was the supporter of the family, and she got us through a lot of tough times.
I can remember being a young graduate assistant here in LA at SC. And I remember walking in day one where I played at Pitt. I was probably one of the more dialed in guys on scheme. I don't want to say like one of the smarter guys, but I understood blocking scheme, pass protection, coverages. I felt like I was dialed. And I walked in day one. I was like, I don't know a damn thing. Like, I don't know anything. And you think you
Right,
know
right,
stuff. Did you have that
right.
moment as well? Because that to me is what also led to so many late nights, sleeping in the office, like just killing yourself to learn the craft so you could show up for the players who trust you as they are
Yeah.
performing the craft.
Oh yeah. I think it was every day. I always say, and I think I've heard a lot of coaches say this. You probably heard the same thing. The day you stop learning is probably the last day you should coach, and it happens every day for me. But those 2 years when I was a graduate assistant, and even when I was quality control at the University of Minnesota back in 2017 and then 2019, working for Coach Fleck, just learning so much, not only about just the obvious of how he's a huge culture driver, huge culture builder, and how he runs his program, but then receiver play is his forte. And I think a lot of people, that goes unnoticed, but how much you learn from just that specific thing with him. Obviously, I worked for Coach Shiraka for a number of years when he was the offensive coordinator under Coach Fleck as well. And I just spent so much time with him seeing how an offense should be structured, not necessarily on game day, but spending so much time with him on Sunday to Friday, where I always got from him, that's when the game is won. People think when you just show up on Saturday, you just win the football game and you just execute some plays. But I saw firsthand as a tight end coach, as a quality control, as a graduate assistant, how much goes into that preparation. And then the final thought along that would be, he always said Wednesday to kickoff was the most important time of your preparation throughout the entire week, because the core game plan is pretty much done. But then a lot of people will just say, hey, it's done. Let's just kind of move on. Let's start to relax. That's when he became his most intense. That's when his preparation was at its finest. And that's what I really took away from all those years with him, and how I learned how to structure an offense, how to run an offense, and how to get the best out of coaches and players.
With the Fuel Forward app, the more discounts you stack, the more you save.
Feels good to save. I know, right?
How low can you go?
Dude, that's amazing. So this offseason, I've been, we've talked a little bit, but I've been all about situational football. Like, it's just been kind of like a text thread with me and coaches and players. And I went and had lunch with a quarterback in the NFL a couple weeks ago. And all we talked about was, in college, it would be like Wednesdays and Thursdays, to your point,
Yep.
like third down and red zone install, or Thursdays and Fridays in the league. I can't wait to pour into that element as a broadcaster this season of like, all right, what coverages change? Does a quarterback know, hey, on 2nd and 7 from the +17, they're going to do this 70% of the time? And what was
Right.
I came away from last year calling a handful of your games and being in your facility was that your quarterback, especially Max Brosmer, and I'm sure Drake is the same way, we'll get to him in a minute, but he was not only dialed on that, but it was though he was invited into that on a Sunday in advance. Was that who you've always been? Is that a philosophy that you've gleaned from Coach Fleck? Like, where did that come into? Because that's a little bespoke, I think, in the world of college football.
Mm-hmm. So Coach Fleck does a great job of bringing people in to discuss things with us, sit down with the offense, defensive staff. I think he always wants us to be growing. He always wants our players to be growing and getting better. And I actually got the idea from Coach Mullen, Dan Mullen, now at UNLV. And he came and visited us for a while. And he had said when he was the head coach, Florida, Mississippi State, and then when he was the offensive coordinator at times, quarterbacks were always in those meetings. And it wasn't the starter, it was everybody. He said to me, he said, the quarterback's a different position. They're going to work different hours. They're going to have different structure. They have to learn differently. Everything's centered around that guy. And he wants that guy in those meetings at all times, because he wants that individual to see the disagreements we have as coaches, the things that we discuss, all those types of things, so that he can see the why. That's when it really clicked for me. And I think as I went through it this past year, Max and I really saw the game the same exact way. And that was critical. And then as you go throughout the week, I always felt like this. I think the worst part of the week for me is early in the week, Monday morning into Monday evening. And then even as you start to get into the third down packages and things along those lines, that's when it can get really challenging for me because I haven't figured out what the defense is doing. People will tell me information, we'll discuss it, but I haven't mastered it. And as the week went on, Max and I were the same way. Drake and I have had those similar discussions already, as well as the rest of the quarterbacks. But I think that's such a challenge that the quarterback has to know. And then when you get to the end of the week, Coach Mullen said this too, the quarterback has to be able to explain everything in the game plan the way that you want it and through the lens that you see it. And so as we got to Thursday's meeting, we got to Friday's meetings, and then even as our final prep comes into Saturday, the quarterback did most of the talking in the meetings. I'm asking him questions. I'm going through things. We're watching games in drive order, things like that, so that he can talk through it and tell me what he's seen. Because if there's something that we're not seeing the same way, that's a problem, and we want to get that corrected before we kick off. Again, I think it's just a lot of the different people. You started this conversation with the support system that you have. You also have to look at the coaches that you've learned from too, and you never know when you're going to learn something. I didn't know I was going to take something that was going to impact the way that I prepare and the way I get a quarterback ready than that 10-minute conversation throughout the course of 2 days with Dan Mullen.
Wow, that's amazing, man. How do you navigate, and you don't have to agree with this, but I believe that quarterbacks are fragile. And by that, I mean, everyone I've ever seen from day one and watching Leinart play at SC to being at the Elite 11 a month ago, because they get coached up every play. So they want it to be perfect. They want to do well. They have this perfectionist element, this driver to them that's amazing. Because every single rep, it's good throw, bad throw, good read, bad read, whatever. So they're always feeling it. So I think there's a fragility to a quarterback that you have to handle with care. And they got to be the toughest guy in the program. So how do you communicate knowing that like there needs to be compassion and empathy, and they also need to be the mirror that the entire team looks up to and says, I need to reflect that?
Yeah, that's a great, everything you just said is outstanding, because I think that I agree with it completely. I would say that I don't want them to necessarily be fragile. I would say that I never want them to relax. I never want their mind to shut down when they're out there. They can't be thinking when they're playing, but they have to just react and respond to the information that's given, and then they respond to what just happened, that result. They have to be coached hard. The whole organization is centered around that guy. We always say in our program, the quarterback is responsible for everyone's livelihood. Every decision that man makes is affecting everyone in the program. It could be athletic trainers, it could be strength coaches, it could be coaches, it's family members. Like, that's what we want to do. And to your point, we have to coach that guy a different way. We have to coach that guy hard. We have to demand the most out of him, and that's why he's the most important guy in all sports.
I love that. Okay, so this is a fun conversation that Coach Peterson and I have all the time, the legendary coach from UW and Boise. Right. Coaching hard. Like, I think that is a phrase that has so many different shades to it. If you could take us inside of your quarterback room, like, what does that mean? Because I think when people hear it, they think like lighting up the quarterback pretty regularly. And I know you well enough to know that is not what coaching hard means. So how might you define that?
I think each coach coaches their players a little bit different. I coach Max Brosmer a little bit different than I coach Drake Lindsey. It's just their personalities. Drake Lindsey has the personality where you can, let me see how I'm going to say this. You can coach him, for lack of a better term, you can coach him hard, that you can be very, very tough on him. Max was one where you could be tough on him, but he wanted to know the why on every single play. Max wanted to have feedback every single play. Drake isn't necessarily like that, but Drake is one that he's going to turn around and he might tell you why right then before I can even get to him. And so that's really cool to see the difference in him, where Max might be, okay, I'm going to think through what I just saw, and then I'll go talk to coach, where Drake will turn around right after the play and tell me exactly what he just saw, why he made the decision. It's just different. And to get to your point, go ahead.
How do you get quarterbacks, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I love this conversation. Like, how do you get the room to be honest? Because I think there's some quarterback rooms that's like, I want to ask a question to kind of know that I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
I want to, if there's a competition, there's a different dynamic there. I've always said, like, quarterback rooms are like shark tanks. There's just not a lot of oxygen for a lot of them. But if you can't flatten the room and be honest, then true growth won't happen. And we're in an era where there's egos, there's NIL, there's all these things that I know you all address within your magnificent program. But honesty, I wonder in the quarterback room, like, how do you get there as fast as humanly possible? Because you got a first-year starter walking in the door now.
It's chemistry. It's chemistry within the room. I am at that. If you want to talk about what's fragile within a quarterback room, it's chemistry. It's how those guys work together, because I don't ever want them competing against each other. We talk about that within our program. We're competing within, with, and against. And we're always going to compete against an opponent. We're going to compete within each other during winter conditioning, and we're going to compete with each other during spring ball. So it's one of those things where I don't want the quarterback room to ever feel like, oh, that guy answers a question incorrectly. Well, we're not going to help that guy because he answered it incorrectly and I'm trying to beat him out. No, I've always said the entire time, and Max started this and Drake has taken it into his own way. Max would say, okay, he'd let Dylan Whitkey answer a question. Dylan Whitkey might answer the question perfectly. Well, then the next one, Drake might answer the question, and it might be a little bit different than maybe Max would answer it. And then Max would interject and have that conversation, and it was open dialogue. That's how the room went. That's how the room is right now. We just took in Emmett Moorhead, who had a very nice career at Boston College, and then obviously went to Old Dominion. Now he's with us. They've invited him in, and they've continued to work with him. Dylan, Max Shikanjansky, Drake Lindsey, all those guys have worked with him to speed him up so that he's ready for training camp, so that we can have the best reps possible. And I think that's where I never want the quarterback to be individually fragile, but that room is fragile, because if you bring guys in that are just competing against each other, you're not going to be able to build anything special within that group. And if that group isn't special there, the offense won't be special, the team won't be special. It all starts with the quarterback room, and that quarterback room drives the entire organization.
It's a special space, that is for sure. I love calling any game. It's been an honor. Here comes year 18, Big Ten Network, and away we go. I love calling games when offenses are built like the ones you have, because I know there's always an answer for the quarterback in his tool belt. He's got to know where he's weak. He's got to know where he can be strong. Like, we're just being general here. How do you prepare your quarterbacks and your offense for situational football? Because I think you guys are as good as I've seen.
Love it. Like, I think playing the quarterback position, every single play is a situation. Coach Fleck meets with those guys weekly, sometimes daily during the season, just on situational football. Then he'll go into the team meeting and he'll discuss situations with the team holistically. But he spends so much time with the quarterback because that's what he looks at himself to as a situational coach. That's how we have to look at it. That's what he drives within me as the offensive coordinator, to look at every situation and not look at it as just a play. And when you look at the game that way, the quarterback has to know that every play gets you into the better situation on the next one. We talk about 1st and 10. Okay, so 1st and 10, what's the goal of 1st and 10? To get 4 yards. Why do we want to get to 4 yards? To get to 2nd and 6. So we get to 2nd and 6, then we want to get halfway to 3rd down. So if we get to 3rd and 3, we're in a much better situation than if we're 3rd and 6. So if we call 4 verts on 1st and 10, and we don't like what we're throwing the ball into, or the read is not telling us to go there, we want to be able to check the ball down to not be in 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 13 and take a sack. Then we're off schedule and now we're not playing. How we do that throughout the entire week is we're always talking about the premier looks for each individual play. Now we can get into the nuts and bolts of how we run our offense and how we go about our weekly structure. As we build those things, we might have multiple play calls that go into a particular play. That's the special thing about what we do as a quarterback at the University of Minnesota is we are building that thing around the quarterback so that he sees it in the same lens that I do. We're building those plays where it might be 2, it might be 3 play calls within a huddle call, so that the quarterback can get us into the right look and the right play, because I feel like the quarterback has the best vantage point of anybody from the field. He can see it better than I can from up top. He can see it better than the center. He can see it better than a wideout, and he can get us into the right play. And again, it goes back to that guy is the most important guy in the organization. He's making full speed decisions within 60 minutes every Saturday.
Yeah, that's pretty unique. And I say that because there's a world in football, and I believe this in college football, not in totality. And again, tell me if you totally disagree. I think high school football, I'm watching guys develop at a rate they've never developed. College, because of the world that we're in right now, like sometimes these guys just got to play, whether that's transfer. You had Maxwell's going to be the guy when he showed up last year. You got a second year player in Drake Lindsey. He's going to be the guy. We've seen freshmen play other places around the country. Do you feel like you have to, I don't want to say sacrifice like part of your playbook, but hone in on like what can allow this guy to play fast because they're maybe playing a little earlier than anticipated? And do you think that's going to impact the development? Or no, at Minnesota, this is what you're going to do. It's going to be pro style offense. We put guys in the NFL. Like how do you, it's nuanced. Like I'm curious how you navigate that with fifth or sixth year guy a year ago and now second year guy here.
I think it all depends on who is at that position. If we're going to have a guy, number one, I always look for a particular trait in a quarterback. I always look for the high-end processor. How do you evaluate that? That's the world. That's what everyone's attempting to figure out. How do you recruit that? How do you evaluate it within the NFL draft process? You hear all those guys talk about they're looking for the high-end processor. They're looking for the guy that can think within the play. And when you find that guy, you find the Patrick Mahomes, you find the Josh Allens, you find all those guys, they all have that same characteristic. The Joe Burrow, which Drake had talked about, I think, in one of his media's availabilities, where that's who he emulates his game after. And they all process at that ability. Now, you have to get into it where there's going to be a core belief in what we're going to do offensively. We're going to be physical. We're going to run the football. We want to execute at a high level. How we do that is going to be based off how our players are. If we have a very deep wideout room, well, our offense is going to be centered around what the wideouts can do formationally, schematically, all that. If we're built based off of, hey, we're 9 deep in the O-line room, well, we might put multiple linemen out there to be able to utilize all their skills. But it all comes back to the quarterback, because the quarterback is going to be the one that is making that full speed decision. And it's all based on what can he do at a high level that can help us gain yards, that can ultimately score points, that can win football games.
So how did you find that Drake Lindsey was a high-end processor in recruiting?
Well, when you look at his high school career, and he was Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Arkansas as a senior. I want to say that in the history of Fayetteville High School, I believe he was the second quarterback to ever start as a junior. Almost positive that is a factual statement. Wow. And because when I went through the recruiting process, everyone kept talking about how he sees the game a different way. Casey Dick is the head coach there. Jay Wilkinson was the offensive coordinator at the time, who I became close with both of those guys. And they just kept saying the entire time, like, hey, this guy can really process once the ball snapped. He understands the game and sees how it's played pre-snap. But the best thing about him is once the ball snapped, he can play. So we're going through the winter, and we have these meetings where we're just talking. They're like half-hour meetings within our 8-hour time period during the winter before we start spring ball. And we start to go through things. I'm just listening to him answer questions. I'm like, this kid kind of understands it. He gets it. He's watching how Max is going through it. Then you get to spring ball, and we have periods where we have the young guys go out and they have maybe a 5, 6, 7 play set. And I was going to challenge him early in spring ball. This was when he was still a senior in high school. Like, he had early enrolled, and I just watched him operate. He's moving people pre-snap. He's making throws on time. He's taking the coaching. I'm just like, okay, this kid got it. And it was his second spring ball practice where Coach Fleck and I just kind of looked at each other like, yeah, I think we got one. And he has to go do it on the field. He has to be able to execute and play at a high level. But you just see those traits and you see those things. And I can go back to his high school career. I mean, he completed north of 70% of his passes, won the state title as a senior. I think he threw 4 picks his senior year, 7 in his career, over 80 touchdown passes. That's what we kind of saw when we evaluated him too. When we started to recruit him. We looked at the completion percentage, we looked at the yardage thrown, but it was really the decision making with the interceptions. When you put on a kid's junior tape, and he really only threw, I think he threw 3 picks. You kind of go back and watch the tape, and you're like, oh, what am I missing here? And we feel very confident about him, and that's just a small piece of him. His intangibles, his leadership, how he goes about his business, how hard he works, and what he does on a daily basis as a redshirt freshman going into his redshirt freshman year. It's really cool to see.
I love that. Okay, I think to me, one of the coolest things to see, and you know this because you guys have to approve it, there's called like a lipstick camera. They put it in the press box, and it's this shot of the coach, right? And you got your call sheet. I bust out an old call sheet from my time at USC, right? And you're reading it, and you're marking on it, and we get a little glimpse inside. If we were to be inside your mind as you're choosing a call in the red zone on a third down, like how do you get to it? Because I know how detailed, and you described how prepared you get, especially Wednesday to game day. But I'll take us in like actual game mode when the clock is winding.
So I think you have to make some of those very important decisions the night before. I make some of the most important decisions that we make throughout the game the day of. And the reason being is because that's when my head is at its clearest. And I feel like everyone knows that early on in the week as a coach, you don't get much sleep. So you don't want to be making those decisions. Okay, what's my fourth down call when the game is on the line? You don't want to make that on Wednesday in the afternoon when you're exhausted, and you want to be able to think clearly. And I think Thursday afternoon is such a great time. Friday night, Saturday morning, day of the game. Those are great times to be able to go through that. But as I go through it, I look at it where I number those third down plays. And I'm like, okay, I want to get to this one. Maybe I want to have a second half call. Eric Kaler is our tight end coach, and he was an offensive coordinator for a number of years at Miami of Ohio. Spent time at Grand Valley State as an offensive coordinator as well, was a Division III head coach. We're both small college guys. We spend a lot of time together, and we talk about a lot of things, and that's one of the things. He sits right beside me in the box, and he's always telling me that as we go throughout the week, he'll come and give me a little tidbit. Hey, save this for your second half call potentially. Hey, get this play called early because we want to do this. And then it just starts into dialogue and conversation where I'm like, hey, I'll highlight this play. I might have highlighted this play that I knew I was going to get to. I'll give you an example of the game you called against USC. If you go back and watch the screen to Darius Taylor that started, I think it was the play that started the drive to go tie the game to make it 17-17. It was like a 32-yard screen play off the opposite sideline, a visiting sideline. And I had called the same formation shift motion 5 or 6 plays throughout the entire game leading up to that point. And it's set up where we were able to get the information and see what the defense was doing each of those times as they saw that happening. And it's set up for a huge play. And I remember highlighting that play at halftime, like I have to get this play called in a critical moment. And I had it highlighted. I looked down and I said, hey, this is the time, and it happened to work. So it's just, you make those decisions and you go through it and you have to live with it. That's what I think a lot of people don't realize is when you make the decision to call a play, you got to live with it. You have to be able to sit there and defend it and go with it and make a sound, intelligent decision that's going to hopefully help the betterment of the entire organization.
Talk about the organization. Every head coach is intentional. PJ Fleck is definitely that. On a bunch of levels. And it's really impressive. I heard about it for years. Actually, my college roommate, one of them is named Andy Lee. He's a punter for the Niners. They were like rookie roommates with the Niners, like way, way back in the day. So I'd always heard about PJ over the course of the years from Andy. And then this year got exposed to it. You've been exposed to it for a long time. I'm curious the impact that you see it have on yourself in your coaching career, the team. And then ultimately, do you want to be in one of those seats? Like, do you want to be a head coach as well?
Yeah, I've learned so much from Coach over the course of the 8 years I've been with him. Going into my 8th year, I was 2 years as a GA, 2 years as an analyst, quality control, 1 year as a tight end coach, and then now my 3rd year as the offensive coordinator. And it's cool because I've been in so many different seats within the organization and seen him in different lenses, different vantage points. And you learn something different each time. How he demands the things out of the GAs and the analysts the way that he did with me back in 2015 and 16. He still says the same things. And I might not have understood. I wrote it down when I was a GA, but I might not have understood it. I understand it now. I understand why he wants to do it, because he wants to develop those guys into becoming the best coaches and men possible. You look at it from the position coach standpoint. He wants each position coach within our organization and our program to coach that position as if they're the head coach of that room. And he's giving you bits of information and giving you details to be able to run your room the way you want to. He doesn't sit there and tell you how to run your position meeting. He doesn't tell you how to run your indie drills. But what he does the best job of, that maybe he doesn't even know, is that those staff meetings, when he coaches the coaches, it's not necessarily on scheme. It's all on, hey, maybe you should say it this way next time, so maybe Darius understands it a little bit better. Maybe you might need to say this to Jamison Gears a little bit different, Eric, just so that he can get his first two steps right in the run game. And it just gets us thinking. He's thinking out loud, and he's talking through things, because he sits in the back of our position meeting rooms at times and just listens to us coach and teach the details of every little thing within the organization, how the building smells when recruits come on campus, how everything is looking when a recruit comes on campus, what the weight room looks like when the guys are done working out. Our guys, if you watched at the end of a workout, Coach Nickel, what he does with the players, they clean up the weight room. It's those small details where everything, the numbers are the exact same way on the dumbbell rack every single time. It's those details, because that's what gets us to a point where we can beat those teams that might have a little bit better players than us in certain positions. That's what gets us over the edge. And to answer your final question, yeah, like, I want to be a head coach. That's the number one objective that I had when I was a sophomore in high school. I go through it. I'm thinking I want to do that at some point. And then when I went through college, like I mentioned earlier, I sat there and said I want to be an offensive coordinator, because that's what I played. I played quarterback. And I was like, okay, sitting up there in the press box, I would always tell my dad, drinking a Diet Coke, looking at the game, calling plays, like, that looks cool. But now it's to the point where I want to develop the best offense we possibly can have. I want to build these young men into the best people they can be, get them to be the best football players they can be. But then I also want to be able to run my own program one day in the same way that Coach Fleck has run his, and have the same success, and do it my own way as well.
Yeah, I love that. Well, you've always been ahead of the sticks. You've been that way on social media too. You grabbed Coach Harbaugh before Jim Harbaugh did, because it's Harbaugh. Was there a strategy involved? Did you stumble into that?
No. I didn't even realize that at the time. I just typed it in. I was like, hey, this is going to be it, and let's see if I got it. And then it had it. I can't remember when I made the Twitter, but yeah, it's hilarious.
I love it. Hey, take the win, man. Always ahead of
No
the
doubt.
sticks. Thank you. You've given us so much time. You've got your family. It's like the end of summer. Training camp is upon us. Wish you the absolute best of luck. I can't wait to get
Thanks.
there, see you, the staff, the team, and have a great year, man. Wish you the best.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
It's the Afterglow. I'm Yogi Roth. Welcome back to Y Option. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with offensive coordinator Minnesota, Greg Harbaugh. As always, every one of our conversations are brought to you by our founding sponsor, 76, keeping you on the go so you never miss a beat. A lot of takeaways from that conversation with me. None more than I think his humility. When you've been around, I think, really powerful offensive minds, and I've been lucky to do that, whether it's Chip Kelly or guys I learned from, Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, you got to have a little edge to you, but you got to have humility. I think he has that fine line. I think you see it in his quarterbacks as they play. Cannot wait to watch Drake Lindsey play this fall. Hope I get a bunch of Minnesota games, because calling their games from the 50 is really fun, because you can predict, especially in the situational football, which I think all of us really lean into, especially if you're an analyst or a fan of the game. Speaking of being a fan of the game, as I said off the top, coming off of Big Ten Media Days, and I referenced how I think quarterback play in this league has dramatically improved, and I will triple down on that. I think it's got a chance to be the best year in the history of this league. I get it's only year 2 of an 18-team league, but I think in the history of the league of just being special, I think everybody has elevated at that position. I get it. Only 5 starters returned to their respective team where they had more than 5 starts a year ago. Drew Aller leading the cause. Dylan Raiola, part of that. Ethan Kaliak-Manis. I understand those names. But how about the new names? Nico Iamaleave at UCLA, chance to be a star. Dante Moore might be the most gifted passer in this league if he's able to win that job in Eugene. You start going up and down the list. Reference, of course, Drake Lindsey on this conversation, this podcast a few times. Aiden Childs, what does he do in year 2? How about Bryce Underwood at Michigan? What does he do? What happens at Maryland? I'm a huge fan of Malik Washington. They're true freshmen. Iowa, Mark Gronowski, Fernando Mendoza, Fernando Mania, now in Indiana. So I just like how this league is upgraded, bringing back Luke Altmaier as well. He's one of those guys with 5 or more starts at his respective school. So that's something exciting. And if you're a Minnesota fan, I hope you came out of this conversation not only excited, but you should be grounded in legit confidence in this season. When I talk about the CFP, Illinois, I don't think they're a dark horse anymore. Like, people are talking about them. Over 16, 18 starters, depending on who you read, return for them. A bunch of guys up front. Of course, their quarterback that I just referenced. Big fan of their coordinators and what they do schematically. I think if there's a sleeper, it's Minnesota. I think there's a world where they can get to 10 wins. Folks, they go to Cal in week 3 against Justin Wilcox. And Cal, their backs are against the wall a little bit, in my opinion. This is a huge game for both of these programs. They both are really impressive situationally. It'll come down to the end. And then they got to go on the road for a couple tough tests at Ohio State, at Oregon, at Iowa. Can they get one of those? Can they maybe get 2 of those? Can they keep those tight? If so, this team can get to 10 wins. It's not going to be easy at all, right? They got to play Rutgers in a home game against Greg Schiano, who, of course, mentored PJ Fleck in a bunch of levels. They got Nebraska at home on a Friday night game. They get Michigan State and Aiden Childs at home as well. It will not be easy, but I think this is the team because they can win in the margins. And that's going to be the story of this league this year, folks. And maybe in the SEC as well, because of the talent and how it's flocking to a lot of those conferences. Why do I say that? Last year in Big Ten play, there were 31 games decided by 1 score or less. Think about that for a minute. Which way does it go? Does it go the way of Illinois, having success in the majority of those 1-score games? Does it look like Nebraska or USC where they couldn't finish in 1-score games? Like, I think that's going to be the difference. So the teams that can win in the margins, that can make spot throws on third downs. If you heard me call games, I always say 3 big-time throws in the second half. I think you're going to need that. Minnesota's got a shot. I get it. We haven't seen Drake Lindsey play at all in highly competitive environments. But everyone I've talked to, you just heard Greg Harbaugh talk about him. You heard PJ Fleck talk about his now QB1 at Media Days last week in Las Vegas. I got no reason to not believe it. They bring back Darius Taylor, one of the top running backs in the Big Ten, one of the most talented running backs in the country with what he can do out of the backfield. So look out. Logan Loya at wide receiver. I'm in on Minnesota. I think they're going to make noise this year. So we'll see. We'll see as the games play out. Okay, what's going to play out here next? Well, number one, make sure you go to yoption.com. I just wrote an article about training camp and how if you've been around football, I don't care if it's high school or college, or of course in the NFL, you've been a professional, this time of year you start itching. I'm going to get on the road and start scratching that itch. Jared DiNardo and company, myself, Ashley Adams, and a bunch of us are going to be on the road for the Big Ten Network doing training camp tours. My first stop is Penn State. Cannot wait to get there. Then we'll be in the Midwest. We'll come out West Coast, and we'll keep it locked right here at Y Option. We'll try to give you elements from every one of those training camp stops. Also going to give you a season preview on pretty much every team in the Big Ten. At least I'm going to try to do that, pending bandwidth. So hang with us there. And if you're one of those members of Y Option, of our community that pay behind the paywall, this is going to be a really fun month for you. I'm going to try to crank up the content and give you something special. Really grateful for you spending your money to be a part of our community. So thank you very much. And if not, if you're on the fence or you can't do it, all good in that regard too. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, and you do get some of our free content here within the newsletter community as well. And these podcasts are always going to be available for anybody, subscriber or not. So there it is. I got a couple days left in my summer. Greg Harbaugh, his summer's over. He actually gave us that interview on his final day of summer. He's back in the office. They got training camp. I got a couple days left. I'm going to paddle out with my boys. I'm going to get in the ocean a little bit. Then the training camp tour kicks off. As always, lots of love. Stay safe. Stay steady. Peace.